Hello everyone, welcome to our audiobook channel. If you enjoy this story or want to hear more exciting content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your feedback helps us improve and bring even more captivating stories. Enjoy listening. Chapter 1. Holy Brilliance Calendar Year 1003, Month of the North Wind, November. Emerald Kingdom, Montenegro Province, Lake County, Blackwater Valley. The valley plains were covered in snow, and smoke was rising from the chimneys. There were some short wooden houses scattered around. On a high ground, a castle that was not very majestic was built against the mountain. The collapsed towers and battlements revealed the desolation of the castle owner. On the hillside outside the castle, a cute snow rabbit was looking for food in a pile of withered grass half covered by ice and snow. At the same time, it was guarding against its predators. 70 meters away, a young man wearing a white fur coat, a white fleece hat, and brown snow boots hid behind a tilted tree, blending into the white background behind him. He slowly stretched out his hand and knocked an arrow on his bow. The bow was a military bow, not an ordinary hunting bow. Following the sound of the arrow piercing through the air, the snow rabbit fell to the ground in the next moment, and the iron arrow had exploded its head. Archery Proficiency +1. Archery, Level 1, 9999/10,000, Rightward Arrow Level 1, Maximum. We can eat roasted rabbit meat tonight. Levi licked his lips and opened his proficiency panel. Levi Schneider. Archery, Level 1, Maximum. Horsemanship, Level 1, Maximum. Aristocratic Dance, Level 1, Maximum. Basic Combat, Level 1, Maximum. Basic Swordsmanship, Level 1, Maximum. Looking at the proficiency panel in his mind, Levi's lips curled up. I've also reached the limit of archery, which is the hardest to improve. Now, within the effective range of the bow and arrow and my field of vision, I can hit any prey that I set my eyes on. Looking at the kingdom's history, I can be called a master archer with my archery when I'm only a knight's page who has been practicing for 2.5 years. In 2.5 years, the knight's page boy needs to master 5 basic skills: horsemanship, archery, dancing, fighting, and swordsmanship. I've already trained them all to the limit and completed the task beyond my expectations. My physical fitness has also been trained to a point where I should be qualified to learn the breathing technique. Only by learning the breathing technique can one become a true knight. In this world where natural disasters and man-made disasters are constant, where the strong prey on the weak, and even supernatural forces are hidden, one can barely preserve one's life. After all, the original owner of this body might have been killed by an evil spirit. Levi was not a native of this world. He was a transmigrator who had been reborn as a noble disciple 3 years ago during the first millennium of the Holy Brilliance calendar. His cheat was the proficiency panel in his mind. According to the last memory of the original owner before his death, when the original owner was fishing in the Blackwater River, he caught a female corpse in white with empty eye sockets and disheveled hair. Her face was pale and swollen, and her bulging skin was leaking water. It was suspected to be an evil spirit described in the folklore of this world, Naiad. Then, the original owner fell into eternal darkness until he occupied his body. Later on, the Baron's retainer, Sir Fred, found himself drenched and sleeping by the river. There was a bunch of stinky seaweed, rotten fishes, and prawns beside him, and he was muttering something like "I don't have an air force" in his sleep. This real knight still thought that young Master Levi had lost his mind out of embarrassment because he could not catch any fish, so he went into the water to catch the fish himself, which led to this scene. Naturally, Levi did not tell anyone about the encounter with the evil spirit, or else it would be difficult to explain that he was still alive after encountering the evil spirit. However, the evil spirit had become a psychological trauma for Levi, and he did not dare to go to the Blackwater River. In fact, from what Levi knew, the legends of evil spirits had existed since ancient times. However, most people had never seen them before. It was as if there were legends of extraordinary existences like wizards in this world who could control the elements of nature, but no one had ever seen them before. Even Sir Fred, who had traveled all over the Emerald Kingdom when he was young and had seen a lot, only regarded wizards as legends. Wizards, what a noble and mysterious profession. No matter how strong knights are, they are just slightly stronger muggles. Compared to wizards, they are like martial arts practitioners and immortal cultivators. Levi yearned for them. Most legends were not groundless. Therefore, after seeing the real existence of evil spirits, Levi firmly believed that there must be wizards in this world. It was not as simple as the fictional legends of the bards. However, he also knew that with his current ability, pursuing a wizard was illusory, just like looking up at the starry sky. He still had to be practical. Therefore, since he was 10 years old, Levi had been constantly training his skills. Now, with the help of the proficiency panel, in less than 3 years, Levi had already trained all 5 knight skills to the maximum. Levi was confident that the vast majority of official knights, such as Sir Fred, were not as strong as him in terms of the basic 5 knight skills, especially archery, which Levi was proud of. The 12-year-old Levi was now 1.75 meters tall. He looked strong and muscular. Other than his youthful face, he was stronger than many adult men in other aspects. In this foreign world where productivity was extremely low, most malnourished civilian males who grew up on black bread were not as strong as Levi. This was a backward era where cold weapons were king. With a strong body coupled with a knight's plate armor that weighed dozens of pounds, their advantage in battle was far from what a weak body could compare to. Chapter 2. Now, everything was ready. All that was left was the breathing technique. Learning the breathing technique as early as possible did not mean that it would be better. If one's physical fitness was not up to standard, forcefully learning it would damage the body, and in serious cases, one would go berserk. This was also the reason why before becoming a knight's attendant, they required the knight's page to learn basic swordsmanship and basic combat to train their bodies. Levi picked up the snow rabbit on the ground and turned around to go home in a good mood. At the foot of the hill, a silver-haired middle-aged knight looked at Levi with a smile and said in a gratified tone, "If the old master was still here, he would be very happy to see your archery skills." This was Sir Fred, known as the Serpent Vulture Knight by his enemies and squires. He was a man that could be trusted, which the Baron had told Levi before he died. In fact, that was indeed the case. For Levi, the time he spent with the Baron was far less than the time he spent with Sir Fred. Therefore, to a certain extent, the relationship between a teacher and a student or a master and a servant was stronger than the relationship between him and the Baron. "You flatter me, Sir Fred. I haven't done enough. I want to learn the breathing technique and become a real knight as soon as possible. Winter has come, and the long night is coming. Wandering knights or bandits in the wilderness may invade our territory at any time and threaten our safety. I can't live under your protection forever. After my father's death, we have lost the Tulip Hill in the south, which is as warm as spring all year round, and the Stormy Hill in the east, which is rich in minerals. The barren and remote Blackwater Valley is our last home. I am the only descendant of the family. For the sake of the Schneider family, I must become stronger. Glory belongs to Black Snake. And I'm ready." Levi looked unwilling. He clenched his fists and tried his best to act. Black Snake with a candle was the emblem of the Schneider family, so the Schneider family was also known as the Black Snake family. His father, Baron Soder Schneider, was not only the Black Snake Knight, one of the Northern Seven Flying Cavalry, a real Grand Knight, but also the Earl of the Tulip Hill and the Lord of the Storm Hill. Compared to the Blackwater Valley, where it was difficult to develop farming in the winter for half a year, Tulip Hill and Stormy Hill were much more prosperous. When Levi was young, He was born in Flower City in Tulip Hill. The climate there was humid, the plains were wide, and the soil was fertile. It was extremely suitable for settling down and developing production. Although Stormy Hill often encountered stormy weather, it was extremely rich in minerals and was also a treasure land. When Levi was 10 years old, he was at the peak of his Black Snake Knight career. He had 5,000 soldiers under his command, and relying on the treasure land of Stormy Hill, he had 500 fully armed and valiant cavalrymen. In this world where productivity was lagging behind, some weak dukes might only have this kind of configuration. However, all of this was built on the personal power of the Grand Knight, the Baron. If a knight was a slightly famous master in the world of martial heroes, then a Grand Knight's status was comparable to the 5 uniques of the Central Plains, which shocked the entire martial arts era. Only the rare legendary knights, such as Leonhart Knight Rhine, Golden Knight Gregor, Blood Knight Brad, and Snow Knight Flair, could be above Grand Knights. On the other hand, existences like legendary knights had a status similar to Bodhidharma, Zhang Sanfan, the founder of Carefree Sect, Dugukaiubai, and other founding masters or martial arts legends in this world. In most cases, they could only be reduced to the ceiling tools in stories. Therefore, Black Snake Knights at their peak were at the top of the pyramid in this world. And such an existence had never returned after accepting the recruitment of the Emerald Kingdom and the Church of Holy Light for the Millennium Holy War against the Tuva Empire by the sea 3 years ago. In the end, Levi only received the unbelievable news that the Baron and all his soldiers had died on the battlefield. According to the laws of the kingdom, the title of nobility was hereditary. The 3 territories of the Baron should be inherited by his only son, Levi. However, before the inheritance, it needed to be certified by a special envoy sent by the king. Under the witness of the special envoy appointed by the king of Emerald Kingdom, Levi became the new owner of the 3 territories under the Baron's command, at least in name. In fact, considering the situation at that time, Levi took the initiative to return to the remote and barren Blackwater Valley, where Baron Sauter had made his fortune. This territory had been managed by Sir Fred, the Earl of Blood and the Earl of Silver Silk, who had been coveting his father's territory for a long time, had actually taken over Tulip Hill and Stormy Hill with the tacit approval of their master, the Duke of Montenegro. The kingdom had turned a blind eye to this. Although the lord's territories were sacred and inviolable by law, the feudal system of the Emerald Kingdom had completely changed. It was common for lords to fight openly and covertly. Levi did not like the feeling of being remembered, so he gave up Tulip Hill and Stormy Hill, the 2 hot potatoes, to the Duke of Montenegro. As the largest territory in the north, the Duke of Montenegro province was also the most experienced and mysterious Grand Knight among the 7 northern flying cavalry. The Duke of Montenegro had long wanted to enter the south and develop his own forces. Levi's prodigal behavior made the Duke of Montenegro very satisfied. In Levi's opinion, without a Grand Knight and a sufficient number of fully armed elite cavalry to deter the foreign enemies, occupying Tulip Hill and Stormy Hill was tantamount to seeking death. With the proficiency panel, he might as well retreat safely and return to the small mountain nest in Blackwater Valley to be a small trash lord. Levi did not have any thoughts of becoming a king himself. He just wanted to quietly cultivate the breathing technique and rely on the proficiency panel to become a knight, a grand knight, or even a legendary knight. Then, he would follow the footsteps of the wizards. After all, based on his current understanding, only a wizard could realize his goal of immortality, and only a wizard could truly be fearless of those supernatural creatures. However, although he thought so in his heart, in front of Sir Fred, his father's most trusted retainer, Levi still had to put on an act. Moreover, the cultivation of knights required a large number of resources and wealth. It was the same in this world. Therefore, Levi's plan was very clear. He wanted to learn the breathing technique and become an official knight as soon as possible. Then, he would set up a territory and earn some money for his own cultivation. After he had enough self-protection power, he would travel to the 7 countries and embark on a journey to find wizards. The middle-aged Sir Fred quietly listened to Levi's young ambition, and a gratified smile appeared on his weathered face. "Baron Levi, my master, you are indeed ready now. Please follow me." Chapter 3. At the basement level of the castle. An underground secret room that Levi had never been to before. The mechanical stone table slowly emerged from the ground. An aged, tattered sheepskin scroll lay quietly on the ground. It was scribbled with all kinds of random little figures with scarlet paint. The figures' postures were strange, and their movements were different as they formed a circle. And around these little people was a large black-scaled snake that seemed to be able to surround the entire castle. The snake had an abstract appearance and was sticking out its tongue. There was an ancient candle standing on its chin. The candlelight dispelled the darkness and illuminated all directions. This is the Schneider family's ancestral breathing technique, black snake breathing technique. It is the foundation of the Schneider family, and the Schneider bloodline flowing in your body is the key to all of this. This breathing technique of excellent quality is even more precious than this black water valley. Sir Fred said solemnly. Levi's breathing was heavy. He could finally embark on the path of a true knight. As far as he knew, knights divided breathing techniques into 4 categories according to the degree of exquisiteness and growth potential of the breathing technique: shallow, excellent, perfect, and legendary. Among them, 90% of the breathing techniques were of the shallow grade. Many people who cultivated such a shallow breathing technique could only be mediocre at the level of a knight's attendant for the rest of their lives, unable to step into the realm of a knight at all. Being able to condense the life seed and become an official knight was already a stroke of luck. It was basically impossible to become a grand knight. For example, the serpent vulture breathing technique practiced by Sir Fred was like this. Of course, an excellent breathing technique was only a stepping stone to becoming a grand knight. To become a grand knight, one needed 90% talent, 9% opportunity, and 1% hard work. A perfect breathing technique was probably only available to the Duke's family. There were not many of them in the entire kingdom. As for the legendary grade breathing technique, like the legendary knight, it only existed in legends, so there was no need to mention it. An important feature of the breathing techniques above excellent quality was that most of the breathing techniques passed down by clans required the bloodline of the clan to cultivate. As for the specific reason, even knights didn't know. This kind of breathing technique was also called the bloodline breathing technique or secret cultivation technique. The black snake breathing technique was a bloodline breathing technique that belonged to the Schneider family. In history, there had been cases of knights snatching the ancestral breathing techniques of other nobles to cultivate. The final outcome was either to cultivate for a lifetime without achieving anything or to go berserk and die from all the blood vessels in their bodies exploding. Some people said that this was a curse that the ancestors of the nobles had placed on those who blasphemed their families. However, Levi was not worried about this. He was a noble, and the pure blood of the Schneider family flowed in his veins. He was the heir of the black snake. The black snake breathing technique was too precious, so Levi did not bring it out of the secret room. Instead, he began to cultivate it in the secret room under the guidance of Sir Fred. As a result, half a month passed. During this time, Sir Fred had been accompanying him. Although he did not know the black snake breathing technique, he was knowledgeable and had more than enough experience to teach Levi. On this day, Levi woke up in a strange posture. He did not seem to be doing any intense exercise, but he was drenched in sweat. His veins were bulging, his face was red, and his breathing was rapid. He felt his blood boiling and circulating at an extraordinary speed. The energy stored in his body was burning crazily. He felt extremely hungry and wanted to eat a whole snow rabbit. "I'm hungry." Levi spoke like a wild beast, his voice low and hoarse. Seeing this, Sir Fred was already prepared. He served a plate of roasted meat, a bowl of goat's milk, and a large white bread roll wrapped in a layer of fragrant jam, as well as boiled cabbage. Such a combination of food included carbon, protein, and vitamins. In fact, the nobles in this world rarely ate vegetables. They thought that the vegetables that grew in the ground were low-grade food, food for the poor. However, Levi knew the importance of balanced nutrition, so every time he asked the servants to cook, they would mix meat and vegetables. He inhaled the food and wolfed it down. His hunger disappeared and his expression relaxed. His appetite was twice that of a normal man, but he was only 80% full. On the proficiency panel in his mind, a new skill had appeared. Black Snake Breathing Technique, Level 1, 1/1000. According to Levi's previous experience, once the skill appeared on the proficiency panel, it meant that he had already started. The next step was to cultivate step by step to increase his proficiency. At the same time, mastering the basic breathing technique was also a sign of becoming a knight's attendant. Shield-wielding attendant, sword-bearing attendant, and quasi-knight. These were the three stages of an apprentice before becoming an official knight. They were collectively called knight attendants. In the shield-wielding attendant stage, other than the cultivation of breathing techniques, one also needed to learn the basic use of shields. Regardless of whether one would need a shield in the future, learning to use a shield in battle was a compulsory skill for knights. At the sword-bearing attendant stage, one would have to start learning real sword skills, not the basic swordsmanship that were child's play. In this world, what could be called skills were all extremely advanced combat techniques that required years or even decades of persistent practice. It was the most important thing for a knight to improve their strength other than breathing techniques. To put it simply, breathing techniques were internal cultivation techniques of martial arts. While sword techniques or other advanced weapon techniques were methods to unleash the power of breathing techniques, they were external cultivation techniques. When the breathing technique was cultivated to a certain level, one would become a quasi-knight. This was the most important step because the next step was to condense the life seed. If he succeeded, he would be able to become an invincible official knight on the battlefield. If he failed, it would be even more difficult to condense it again. Young master, it seems that you've already mastered the black snake breathing technique. Although it is much slower than your father's speed of mastering it in 3 days, it has reached an average level in the history of the black snake family. In addition, you should have also felt that after you truly learn the breathing technique, you will consume a large amount of food every day. Therefore, before you cultivate in the future, you must prepare enough food in advance. Otherwise, that exaggerated hunger would dominate your mind and destroy your will like a gluttonous demon. Driven by the hunger instinct, you might do some crazy and depraved things. Many of those notorious lunatic knights who were burned to death by the church were a result of this. These crazy wretches were basically commoners who wanted to cultivate the knight's breathing technique. They wanted to become stronger to protect their families and let them lead superior lives. They walked on the edge of madness time and time again, thinking that they were different. They thought that there would be many flukes and miracles in the world. In the end, some ate their old fathers, some ate their wives and children. Sir Fred said with a complicated look. He was a knight born as a commoner, so he knew how it felt. He was very grateful to Levi's father, who had saved him at a critical moment. Chapter 4. Lunatic Knight. Levi had heard of this term before, and it referred to those knights who had gone berserk in cultivation. Now, he had personally experienced the primitive desire to turn into a terrifying evil beast, eat raw meat, drink blood, and eat gluttonously. He was a little shocked and even doubted whether the path of a knight was correct. According to the standards of martial arts novels in his previous life, these knight breathing techniques were all proper demonic techniques. Should he continue to cultivate them? However, when he thought of those terrifying evil spirits, those greedy and sinister noble colleagues, and the continuous flames of war brought about by the disputes between the kingdoms, he immediately strengthened his path as a knight. Life and death were the most important things in the world. As long as he was alive, everything was possible. Knights were the only protective method he could come into contact with at present. I will be careful. Thank you for your reminder, Sir Fred, Levi said gratefully. He might have to think of a way to make money. If this continued, the barren Blackwater Valley would not be able to support 2 knights. He did not want them to become 2 lunatic knights and be eliminated by the radiant knights of the church. Fred nodded and continued, next, you need to wear armor every day and hold a shield to carry out weight-bearing cultivation to increase the difficulty. This way, you can unleash the power of the breathing technique in actual combat. You won't be dragged down by the armor, or you won't be used to wearing armor in battle. In addition, there's a formula for the Black Snake secret medicine on the legacy scroll. Young master, you must have memorized it, right? Sir Fred reminded. Levi nodded. In order to increase the speed of cultivation, most breathing techniques of excellent quality needed to be paired with the corresponding secret medicine. The formula of the Black Snake secret medicine was not complicated: 50 grams of snake blood, 1 snake gall, 10 grams of green turtle shell powder, 10 grams of plant ash, 3 mandrake petals, 1 drop of ambergris, 1 drop of liquid amber, and 100 milliliters of pure water. Other than ambergris, the other materials were not difficult to find and were not expensive. The snake blood and snake gall could be from any snake, but different snakes had different effects. Ambergris was a little troublesome. The ambergris in this world was not the product of the sperm whale's stomach in his previous life. Instead, it came from the glands in the mouth of a land beast called the earthly dragon beast. Earthly dragon beasts were known as one of the most dangerous animals in the wilderness by the traveling poets of the kingdom. They were extremely powerful and invulnerable. They frequently appeared in the stories of knights and traveling poets, similar to the evil dragons in the stories of Dragon Quest. In addition, earthly dragon beasts had another special characteristic. They liked to eat shiny things, such as gold coins and gems. Under normal circumstances, to deal with an adult earthly dragon beast, one would either have to use a human T-Rex Grand Knight with the best weapon to kill it, or at least 5 official knights would have to use traps and poison to trap the earthly dragon beast, and use armor-breaking crossbows to kill it. One of the legendary knights, Leonhart Knight Rhine, before he became a legend, was that he single-handedly killed an adult male earthly dragon beast that wreaked havoc in the northern part of the kingdom. Previously, 3 Grand Knights had gone hunting for this earthly dragon beast, but they failed. A young Grand Knight had even died because of it. In the end, the Leonhart Knight succeeded. He found a total of 8,000 gold coins and priceless jewelry in the earthly dragon beast's stomach. In the era of cold weapons, hunting earthly dragon beasts was not easy. Therefore, the price of ambergris had always been high. A small bottle of ambergris was worth 100 gold coins. It could be exchanged for 5 sets of well-made knight armor, 20 healthy young serfs, or 100 cows. With Levi's current financial resources, even if he sold everything and exploited the serfs to death, he would not be able to afford it. I'm just starting out, so I don't need any secret medicine. I'll take it slow. In the following period of time, Levi started to work on his experience, not feeling bored at all. Apart from gaining experience, Sir Fred would also introduce some basic knowledge of knights to Levi, which benefited him greatly. The knight's breathing technique was a training technique that stimulated the potential of a knight's bloodline by adjusting his breathing rhythm and making different movements and postures, thereby strengthening his body and improving his physique, strength, endurance, speed, and other physical qualities. This kind of improvement was far beyond normal fitness training, so he had to eat a lot of food to replenish his calories after every cultivation. After all, there was no such thing as spiritual energy in this world. Although it was an all-around improvement in physical fitness, different breathing techniques had a different emphasis. The black snake breathing technique focused on defense. After cultivating this breathing technique to a small success, one could begin to try condensing the life seed and advance to an official knight. After that, the overall physical fitness would be greatly improved, and one would have a resistance ability that was several times higher than ordinary people. In addition, a layer of light black fluid film would appear on the surface of the knight's arms, making the skin of the knight's arms as tough as rubber and resistant to grass. Although he was not at the stage of invulnerability, he could still neutralize most of the force from ordinary blunt weapons. This kind of thin film was known as black gas by knights. The official name given by the Church of Holy Light was Holy Power, saying that the power of knights came from the Holy Father. In this era of divine authority, the rulers behind the various kingdoms were often the churches. Levi felt that the church was just trying to make things easier to manipulate knights, and religion was the best at this. Since the God of the church was so awesome, why wasn't the one guarding the church a priest who knows divine spells? Instead, it was the radiant knights formed by knights. In short, the black snake breathing technique was not the only technique that could produce black gas. Other breathing techniques could produce it as well, but the quality, quantity, and effects were all different. If it was a breathing technique that focused on speed, the black gas might appear on the legs, giving the knight an explosive speed and agility that far exceeded the athletes in his previous life. This was the power of the breathing technique. It was not just a method to strengthen the body. After advancing to become an official knight and producing black gas, to a certain extent, the knight had already embarked on the path of the extraordinary. After reaching the level of a grand knight, the black gas produced by the black snake breathing technique would cover the entire body and become even harder. Apart from a few places like the eyes, grand knights could become invulnerable for a short period of time. Their resistance was comparable to earthly dragon beasts. In this era of cold weapons, this was like Superman. With such strength, coupled with armor, weapons, and war horses, with the powerful combat skills and combat awareness of a grand knight, he could easily defeat 1,000 on the battlefield and change the outcome of a small battle. Therefore, Levi never believed in the nonsense of his father dying on the battlefield. How could his father, who was already close to the peak of human combat strength, die on the battlefield? With his strength, even if he couldn't defeat thousands of soldiers, it would be easy for him to leave. Even a grand knight of the same level would find it difficult to stop him. As for the legendary knights, it was possible, but not likely. Legendary knights were elusive and almost detached from the world. Even kingdoms and churches would find it difficult to order them to act. Trees stand out in the forest, and the wind will destroy them. Levi was certain that his father's death was a conspiracy between the church and the kingdom. Therefore, he had to learn his lesson. Before he had absolute crushing power, he could just hide in the Blackwater Valley. Store up grain, build high walls, and slowly become king. Tejus's 9-word policy of pacifying the world still applied to Levi. However, he didn't want to be a king. He just wanted to be a rich little lord. The game of power was not something that ordinary people were qualified to participate in. Levi had a good grasp of his political intelligence. Chapter 5. Black Snake Breathing Technique Proficiency Plus 3. Black Snake Breathing Technique Proficiency Plus 2. Black Snake Breathing Technique, Level 1, 233/1000. With the positive feedback from the proficiency panel, Levi silently cultivated the breathing technique day after day. Other than the necessary rest times such as eating and sleeping, he spent the rest of his time cultivating. It could be said that as long as he didn't die from cultivating, he would cultivate to his death. As a result, the other servants rarely saw Levi's figure in the castle. Occasionally, they would see the lord twisting his body in a strange manner or wearing heavy armor and holding a shield, constantly defending against the storm-like attacks of the serpent vulture knight. Our lord is so young, but he's so hard-working. This really makes me feel inferior. Seeing that Levi was training harder than them, the militiamen felt embarrassed to slack off. After all, there was no such thing as a boss working hard while his employees slacked off. If they did that, they would be fired sooner or later. The militiamen were forced to start fighting. What is it? The Lord is still training? Then I can't sleep either. This way, when the Lord sees that I'm still working hard after training, he might give me an extra piece of bread the next morning. Although the militiamen were working harder and harder, with Levi serving as a foil, no matter how hard they worked, they could not compare to the tirelessly robotic Lord. Seeing how hard-working Levi was, Fred was very pleased. When Levi was cultivating, he was responsible for handling all the matters in the territory with the butler. He did not let these trivial matters delay the Lord's cultivation time. However, some disputes between the residents of the territory still required Levi to personally step forward to administer justice. This way, he would not lose his dignity and authority as a lord. In his previous life, he was a lawyer, and this was the only thing he could do professionally after transmigrating. Just like that, the moon of the northern wind left in a hurry. The coldest winter month of the year, December, had quietly arrived. This meant that for the northern regions like Blackwater Valley, the cold wave would be even more turbulent, and the blizzard would be even more violent. Many of the wooden houses of the serfs had been in disrepair for a long time and were destroyed by the wind and snow in the cold wind. The mountains were sealed by the heavy snow. In such a cold winter, it was naturally difficult to rebuild them. The kind-hearted Lord, Levi, asked Sir Fred to temporarily settle these serfs in the castle and found them a job in the castle. The young girls or women were arranged by Levi to be maids, responsible for taking care of Levi and Sir Fred's daily life. He also selected a portion of young and middle-aged men and incorporated them into the militia. This way, the number of militia under his command reached an unprecedented number, 50 people. These militiamen were all led by Sir Fred, who taught them basic combat skills. After training, they were responsible for repairing the castle buildings, doing some heavy labor, and grazing and farming. They were not full-time soldiers. With the current level of the Blackwater Valley, they could not afford to support full-time soldiers. The elderly and children were responsible for some relatively light physical labor. Everyone could contribute their own strength to the territory and get their share of food according to their work, a piece of gray bread and a bowl of red bean soup. Gray bread was a little better than black bread, but it was not as fragrant and soft as white bread. In fact, with the productivity of Blackwater Valley, the exquisite white bread was barely enough for Levi and Sir Fred to eat. The powerful body functions of knights were bound to be accompanied by a huge amount of calories. Levi's daily food requirement was 5 to 8 times that of a normal person. Most of the energy was used by the breathing technique to strengthen his body, and a small portion was converted into excrement. However, it was this small portion that made Levi have to poop 3 times a day. On the other hand, Sir Fred had already passed the rapid growth period of his breathing technique. As an official knight, his appetite was only 3 times that of an ordinary person when he did not deliberately circulate his breathing technique. Levi's generosity made the serfs in the territory very grateful to him. They were grateful to this young, kind, and handsome lord for his gift. As for Levi himself, he was completely immersed in cultivating the breathing technique. He felt a sense of accomplishment every day as he watched the proficiency of the black snake breathing technique increase visibly. At the same time, he was also constantly on guard against the arrival of wandering knights or bandit groups wandering in the wilderness. After all, for those homeless dogs, a weak lord like Levi was undoubtedly a good target to rob. Of course, with Sir Fred around, Levi did not have to worry about ordinary enemies. As the right-hand man of the Black Snake Knight, although Sir Fred rarely fought, the name, Serpent Vulture Knight, was still a deterrent in the surrounding areas. When Levi was not cultivating, he would occasionally check on the training results of Sir Fred's militia. From the beginning, they were just a bunch of useless people, but now, they had barely formed the ability to fight. With the guidance of the knight, their progress was visible to the naked eye. In the future, they would also become an important force to protect themselves and their territory. To be honest, the population of Levi's territory was still too small, and the production rate was also the lowest among the barons. After all, he had basically left the family with nothing and returned to the Blackwater Valley with nothing. For the weak Levi, this was a helpless move. Time passed by in cultivation. The coldest month of winter in the north of the kingdom had finally passed. Year 1004 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, the first day of the first month, January. This day was the birthday of the Heavenly Father, and also the new year of the Emerald Kingdom. Coincidentally, it was also Levi's birthday. Baron of Blackwater Valley, Earl of Tulip Hill, and Master of Stormy Hill, Levi Schneider was 13 years old. The cold wind was still blowing in the Blackwater Valley. Inside the castle, Levi had completed a strange and twisted breathing technique. He stretched his 1.8-meter tall body and stood on the second floor of the castle in a jovial posture, looking at the residents below with a deep gaze. His entire temperament was completely different from a month ago. Beneath his sunny and handsome face, there was a gloomy temperament like a snake. His muscles were full and round, the lines were deep, and he was strong and powerful. He was as perfect as an ancient Greece statue. Seeing Levi like this, one could not help but sigh, was this what a 13-year-old looked like? He looked at the sky full of snow and ice, feeling exceptionally comfortable. It was a new year. The castle was decorated with lanterns and streamers. The young and freckled maids were busy with their work. Their little faces were red from the cold wind. They giggled and prepared for the New Year and birthday banquet of the Lord. The soldiers also drank hard liquor and chatted with Sir Fred. They thanked the knight and the Lord for their gifts in the past year and sent their New Year and birthday wishes to the Lord. The other serfs sent delicious ham, cheese, dried fruits, fruit wine, and other agricultural products to the castle to express their gratitude to Levi. Compared to the lords in this world, Levi, who had transmigrated from the modern world, had a much better attitude and respect toward these people. Therefore, although the serfs living in Blackwater Valley were poor, they were content. At least here, they could occasionally feel the dignity of being born as humans. They could also receive the protection of the Lord and Sir Fred. They still had basic security. Of course, this was not the only reason why Levi was happy. Most importantly, his black snake breathing technique had finally broken through to the second level after nearly 2 months of crazy, day and night experience. Chapter 6. Black Snake Breathing Technique, Level 2, 1/5000. Shield Skill, Level 1, Maximum. Perhaps it was because Levi's foundations were too good, and he had a senior official knight's tutoring every day. Advancing the black snake breathing technique to level 2 was far easier than Levi had imagined. As for the shield skill, he had already reached his limit. The difficulty of this skill was far inferior to basic archery and basic sword techniques. As a person who had obtained the maximum 10,000 experience points on basic archery, these were nothing. From today onwards, Levi had stepped into the second stage of knight attendance, sword-bearing attendant. He was one step closer to his goal of becoming an official knight. The next step was to become a quasi-knight with a level 3 breathing technique. A total of 5,000 proficiency points were required. Levi estimated that it would take at least half a year to break through to the level of a quasi-knight. He had been practicing the breathing technique for too long, so he needed to rest his body and mind. He had to relax to a certain degree when he cultivated. Otherwise, if he maintained a high intensity and tense state, he would easily go berserk. Now that he had become a sword-bearing attendant, he already had the basic strength. Levi's current physical fitness should be twice that of a normal man. With his bare hands, Levi could easily beat up 5 adult men with brute force. This was already an exaggeration. One had to know that Levi was only 13 years old, and he was still a child. According to Sir Fred, as a senior official knight, his physical fitness was only 5 times that of a normal person. This meant that the black snake breathing technique was indeed extraordinary. However, Levi lacked actual combat experience and profound combat techniques. Another important skill of a sword-bearing attendant was sword techniques or combat techniques with other weapons. Knights rarely used their fists in a fight, even though their fists could easily kill a person. However, as the saying goes, an inch longer is an inch stronger. Under the circumstances of having a weapon, using fists and feet to fight was too stupid. Moreover, a body of flesh and blood was definitely no match for weapons. He would have to learn sword skills from Sir Fred. After all, even a genius like his father had to admit that Sir Fred was more talented than him in swordsmanship. This could be seen from another name that Sir Fred had when he traveled around the kingdom in his early years, the Don Swordsman. What a cool title! There was no rush to learn sword skills. Today was the new year. Levi wanted to give himself a good day off and enjoy the happiness of being a noble. At the banquet, Levi sat in the Lord's seat, and Sir Fred sat beside him. Other than that, there were no other nobles who came. They were all from their own territory. It was winter, and the road was blocked by heavy snow. Blackwater Valley was in a remote location. Although there were 3 barren territories in the surroundings, Boulder Territory, Frostwind Territory, and Silver Moon Territory, they were far away. Therefore, all year round, especially in winter, there was not much interaction between these lords. Only during the summer would there be some trade within the territory. All in all, the barons who could survive in this area were the more miserable ones. That was why the rise of Levi's father was so legendary. He started from barren land in the north and made great contributions to the kingdom's wars. The nobles in the neighboring countries knew about the Black Snake Knights and eventually became the lord of 2 rich lands. However, Levi did not like to deal with other lords. It was best for everyone not to cause trouble and coexist peacefully to achieve a win-win situation. At the outermost layer of the banquet were the shy, timid, and self-abased serfs. They enjoyed the same delicacies as the lord, but they did not dare to eat as much as they wanted for fear of angering the lord. In the territory, Levi was their king and could do whatever he wanted to them. At the same time, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the lord to be so mighty and majestic at such a young age. He didn't look like a 13-year-old youth at all. After 3 rounds of wine, Levi continued to eat by himself, enjoying the attentive service of the maids. The maids rubbed Levi's incomparably thick male body, their faces turning extremely red. These maids were all young farm girls who worked quickly. They were usually very lively when they chatted in private, but they were very reserved when they served Levi. Suddenly, a short and stout youth came to Levi and knelt on the ground with a thud. He placed a long cloth bag in front of Levi. Levi recognized this youth. He was the son of the old blacksmith Toby in the territory. Levi called him Little Toby, and his name seemed to be Milan. "Little blacksmith Milan, what's the matter?" Levi asked. Milan opened the cloth bag and saw a knight's sword shining with a cold light. "My lord, this is the best sword I made last year. I want to give it to you," he said with his head lowered. "Oh." Levi took the sword. There were very few impurities on the blade of this sword. Whether it was forged from materials or sharpened, it was definitely of medium quality in this world with low productivity. It was worth 1 or 2 gold coins. It is indeed a good sword. Levi was not stingy with his praise, so he accepted it without hesitation. The people in the territory were all his vassals. Their land and property also belonged to him, so he could accept it with a clear conscience. After all, he still had to protect their safety in this chaotic and dark world. "By the way, how is your father's health?" Levi asked with concern. He was not pretending. Old Toby was the most important blacksmith in the territory. The weapons and equipment used by the militia and the farm tools used by the serfs were all made by old Toby's family. They were the talents of the territory. The young blacksmith Milan suddenly lowered his head and knelt on the ground. He sobbed and begged, "My lord. Yesterday when my father and I were pulling oars on the mountain, we encountered the wild boar gang. I ran away quickly, but my father was kidnapped. I had no choice but to seek your help." Levi's expression turned cold when he heard that. The wild boar gang? The thing that I was most worried about still happened. I know about your father's matter. I'll handle it. Go home and wait for my news. Because of this small episode, Levi's good mood today was ruined. After the banquet, Sir Fred came to look for Levi with a murderous look in his eyes. The wild boar gang kidnapped old Toby. It was obviously planned for a long time. After all, their gang has been developing recently and needs a lot of weapons, and old Toby is an excellent blacksmith that they had set their eyes on. The leader of the wild boar gang is the wild boar knight Pyg. He used to be a blacksmith and was the junior brother of old Toby. Later, he obtained a breathing technique from somewhere and was lucky enough to break through to an official knight. However, he shouldn't be my opponent. Why don't I take a team tomorrow and bring old Toby back? Chapter 7. Levi shook his head. There's no hurry. The snow has blocked the road, and we don't know if this is a trap set by the wild boar gang. Old Toby is a talent that the wild boar knight values, but he's not the kind of loyal person. In order to save his life, he will definitely obey the wild boar knight and work for him. Therefore, he should be safe for the time being. Send someone to pacify little Toby. During this period of time, send someone to inquire about the information of the wild boar gang first, then we will make a plan. After my father passed away, any Tom, Dick, or Harry has been wanting to step on the Black Snake family. What a headache. Sir Fred, you can take a rest first. Teach me the real sword skills tomorrow. I can also try out the good sword made by little blacksmith Milan. Levi held his forehead. Under the dim candle light, his pupils emitted a soul-stirring majesty. It was not the majesty of a noble lord, but a kind of pressure that transcended the mortal world as if it came from a legendary creature from a distant legendary era. Sir Fred looked at Levi as if he was being stared at by a terrifying beast. He looked at the oil painting hanging on the wall behind Levi. In the painting, a black snake surrounded the entire castle with a candle in its mouth. It was mysterious and solemn, and its eyes were fierce. Looks like young master's talent is not bad. With this aura, his breathing technique should have made a breakthrough. Fred muttered to himself in shock. From Levi's eyes, he could see some of the glory of the Black Snake Knight. He remembered that Baron Blacksnake had taken 3 months to become a sword-bearing attendant after he had mastered the breathing technique. Then, he became a quasi-knight in 1 year, a knight in 2 years, and a grand knight in 8 years. The young master had only been exposed to the breathing technique for 2 months. During this time, he had spent half a month just to grasp the initial stage of the breathing technique. This kind of talent was not very outstanding, but he did not expect that his cultivation would become faster and faster. He actually had the momentum of catching up from behind. Fred couldn't figure it out either. In the end, he could only attribute it to his young master's hard work. In the past 2 months, he had seen Levi's hard work and was sincerely impressed. Not to mention nobles, even commoners were rarely able to work so hard. Young master, the cultivation of a knight requires a certain degree of relaxation. Don't give yourself too much pressure. After he finished speaking, he slowly retreated and disappeared into the shadows. Levi touched his long sword and looked at the proficiency panel in his mind, sighing in his heart. I just want to cultivate silently and be a self-sufficient little lord. I want to live a peaceful life. However, without strength, all of this is just wishful thinking. It was 4 in the morning on the 2nd day of the new year. It was a long night, and the sky was still dark. In the territory of Blackwater Valley, whether it was the residents or the soldiers, They were all immersed in their dreams. On the training ground, Levi put on his heavy armor and held Frostmourne in his hand. This was the name he gave to the night sword he had just obtained to commemorate the world he could never return to. Sir Fred pulled out his long sword Daybreak and said, "The sword skill I'm teaching you today is a sword skill that I chanced upon when I was traveling around the kingdom in my early years. This sword skill doesn't have a name, so I call it the Golden Cross Slash. The Golden Cross Slash essentially uses an extremely mysterious and exquisite technique to exert force and unleash power beyond your imagination. If your realm is high enough, you can master it and use it on heavy hammers, sabers, spears, or even a pitchfork, and not just with swords. The Golden Cross Slash has a total of 3 realms: Vibraforce Slash, Ripple Slash, and Revolving Slash. The higher you go, the harder it is to comprehend. There are 3 kinds of force exerting techniques used here. The simplest is the vibration force, then the advanced ripple force, and the highest realm of the revolving force. I've been cultivating this sword skill for more than 20 years. Up until now, I've only completely grasped ripple force. However, its power is already comparable to the best exquisite sword skill. Therefore, the quality of the sword skill completely depends on the user's comprehension realm. If your talent is ordinary and you can only comprehend the Vibraforce Slash, then this is a relatively good shallow sword skill. But if you're talented, and you're able to comprehend the Revolving Slash, this will be a perfect sword skill that might even be at the legendary level. After Sir Fred finished speaking, Levi could not help but smile bitterly. Even you have only comprehended the ripple force. In that case, is there really anyone who can cultivate the sword technique to the highest level of the revolving force other than the founder? Sir Fred smiled. Young master, don't be discouraged. As long as you can comprehend the second stage and master the ripple slash, it will be enough. Your father only mastered the ripple force back then. Among the Grand Knights, his strength is already at the top level. Levi nodded. Of course, he would not give up. With the proficiency panel, he would be able to reach the highest level of the sword skill sooner or later. Sir Fred held Daybreak in his hand, and he emitted a powerful aura. His entire body shook in a way that was almost like a phantom, and then this vibration was transmitted to the knight's long sword. Buzz. The long sword hummed. Daybreak's sword radiance split into 2, forming a violently vibrating cross slash. Kaka. The black dragon wooden stake in front of Sir Fred, which was as thick as a bowl, split into 4. Then, he sheathed his sword in one go. Levi was shocked. Although the black dragon wood was not as hard as steel, it was impossible for an ordinary person to cut through using a knight's sword made with the forging techniques of this world. Sir Fred could do it by transmitting the special vibration force to his knight's sword. This was the power of a knight, the power of a sword skill. He was too strong. Levi yearned for it. This was what he pursued. Sir Fred's face revealed a trace of pride. He had only used 30% of his strength. If he went all out and used ripple force, he could even cut through the knight's plate armor with the knight's sword in his hand. However, the damage to the knight's sword was too great. It was simply a wastrel's behavior. The vibration force was enough to deal with most enemies. This is the technique of exerting force. You might not understand it, so I'll demonstrate it to you again. Sir Fred knew that even a genius swordsman would find it difficult to grasp the basic technique of the golden cross slash on his first try. Levi nodded. It was too fast, and he did not see it clearly. Not to mention that it appeared on the proficiency panel. The proficiency panel could only give him a little bit of experience when he had already mastered the basics. It could not make him a genius who could learn it in one go. Just like that, after demonstrating it to Levi countless times, Levi gradually understood the basic technique of exerting force. He began to try to swing his sword. Practicing the sword was a process of constant repetition, learning, making mistakes, and comprehension. If the technique of exerting force was slightly off, it would be impossible to form that so-called vibration force. Sir Fred patiently taught Levi again and again. Levi did not bother to cultivate the breathing technique these few days. He was fully focused on practicing his sword. He had to at least have a basic grasp of it, and it would appear on his proficiency panel. Due to his mediocre breathing technique talent, Levi was already prepared for long-term training. On the third day, when Levi was practicing his swordsmanship, he suddenly felt a weak and rhythmic vibration from Frostmourne in his hand, just like the breathing of a human. His face lit up. He had sensed it. Vibration force. Although it's very weak, it's indeed vibration force. I've entered the basics. A new skill appeared on the proficiency panel. Chapter 8. Black Snake Breathing Technique, Level 2, 5/5000. Golden Cross / Level 1, 1/1000. Special Effect, Elementary Vibration. After 3 days, the Golden Cross / was finally mastered. However, Levi looked at the Special Effects column on his interface. Special Effects. This was the first time Levi had encountered such a situation. It was obvious that the elementary vibration referred to the vibration force mentioned by Sir Fred. This was the most powerful aspect of the Golden Cross /. It was an extremely ingenious technique that allowed the knight's sword to produce high-speed vibrations, thereby achieving the effect of cutting iron like mud. This also shows that this Golden Cross / is really very advanced. It's only at level 1, but it already has a special effect. Even the level 2 Black Snake breathing technique doesn't have a special effect. Levi was shocked. He did not know where Sir Fred had learned such a heaven-defying sword technique. He now seriously suspected that the person who created this genius sword skill was at least a Grand Knight, or even the legendary knight. After learning the sword skill, Levi was very satisfied, and he wished he could work his brain to the limit. He struck while the iron was hot and practiced the Golden Cross / a few more times. He had only grasped the basic method of using the vibration force. He could only produce a very weak vibration force, and he needed a long time to accumulate it. In actual combat, he would be killed before he could use the vibration force. Therefore, he still needed to practice diligently. Golden Cross / Proficiency +3. Golden Cross / Proficiency +2. Perhaps it was because he had just mastered it, but there was a lot of room for improvement. Every time Levi practiced, he would gain at least 2 points of proficiency. Levi only stopped when he was hungry. After resting for a while and eating something, he met Sir Fred, who had just returned from training the militia. "Young master, you've mastered the vibration force?" Sir Fred asked when he saw how happy Levi was. Levi nodded. It was not difficult to master the vibration force in 3 days. It was just average. There was a huge gap between the initial mastery and the peak perfection. Levi had just entered the rudiments. Moreover, Levi had a foundation in swordsmanship. He was a man who had maxed out his basic swordsmanship. The vibration force was originally the lowest level of the Golden Cross / technique. Even if one's talent in sword arts was not good, one could still master it if they were willing to spend time practicing. The ripple force and the revolving force were getting harder and harder. Not bad. Sir Fred smiled. It took your father 2 days to master it? Levi suddenly felt a sense of defeat. He didn't expect that his talent in swordsmanship was not as good as his father's. "Sir Fred, how long did you take?" Levi asked. Sir Fred extended 2 fingers. 2 days. No, twice. Pretend I didn't ask. Levi was greatly shocked. Was this a true genius of the sword? He had practiced nearly 100 times in 3 days before he could barely master it. However, Sir Fred only practiced it twice. At this moment, he deeply felt the difference between a genius and an ordinary person. Even someone as strong as Sir Fred had been stuck at the ripple force level for 20 years. He still did not see any hope of comprehending the revolving force. If it was an ordinary person, Levi did not dare to think about it. Fortunately, I have the proficiency panel. As long as I work hard and live, one day, I will reach the revolving force realm. Levi calmed down. By the way, the people I sent to investigate the wild boar gang have returned. Guess what? Sir Fred narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. He continued, the wild boar gang has joined the Wilderness Brotherhood. Wilderness Brotherhood? No wonder that wild boar knight was so impudent. It turns out that he has found a backer. Levi sneered. The Wilderness Brotherhood was considered a rather famous force in the north of the kingdom. It was said to be an organization that believed in the Lord of the Wilderness. Most of the members were wandering knights, mountain bandits, and bandits who wandered the wilderness. The Wilderness Brotherhood advocated the theory of return to the wilderness, freedom of all things and everything originates from chaos, and everything will eventually end up in chaos. They believed that all things originated from the wilderness of chaos, lived in chaos and disorder, and would eventually return to chaos. This was the best state for all kinds of frost to compete for freedom. The Lord of the Wilderness was the incarnation of chaos in the human world. For this reason, they advocated the overthrow of the tyranny of the church and the kingdom, the abolition of all power systems, the abolition of the aristocratic lord system, and the return to the original system similar to anarchism. Only in this state could all things continue to evolve under the creed of survival of the fittest, and finally everyone could become a god. There was no doubt that this was definitely heresy. Therefore, the Wilderness Brotherhood was the main target of the church and the kingdom. Originally, this organization had disappeared for a long time, but because of the turmoil caused by the Millennium Holy War 3 years ago, the kingdom and the church had no time to care about this small fry. Now, this organization had reappeared in the world. What do you want to do? Sir Fred asked. Levi said without hesitation, then let them take care of the old blacksmith Toby for us first, as little blacksmith Milan's skills are about the same. In a few days, arrange for more people to be apprentices for the young blacksmith. The production of weapons and equipment for the militia cannot be stopped. All right. Sir Fred nodded. The world is getting more and more chaotic. It was not that Levi was timid, but his current strength was still too weak compared to the Wilderness Brotherhoods. The Wilderness Brotherhood had existed for a long time and had taken in many gangs or wandering knights. If it were not for the fact that they did not have any grand knights, the number of knights in this organization would probably be incomparable to those earls. After so many years of hiding, who could be sure that the Wilderness Brotherhood didn't have a grand knight? I'm still too weak. If I had my father's strength and directly charged into the wild boar gang, I'm sure that the Wilderness Brotherhood wouldn't dare to stand up for me. Levi mocked himself and returned to his daily training. Holy Brilliance Calendar Year 1004, month of Germinal, February. It was supposed to be the season when all living things revived. However, the Blackwater Valley was in the north. Although it was not as cold as the winter month, it was still covered in snow. Levi was forced to live an isolated life. Fortunately, he had the experience of the black snake breathing technique and the golden cross slash, which kept him busy forever. Levi's daily routine was to practice the breathing technique twice a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. The rest of the time, he would practice the golden cross slash. The breathing technique was the foundation, so it was definitely the most important. However, the breathing technique consumed too much of Levi's energy and spirit. At the same time, it also consumed too much of the territory's food. The food stored before winter would not be enough if he focused on cultivating the breathing technique. Levi really found it difficult to swallow the black bread. However, at Levi's current speed, he could practice the breathing technique 6 times a day and gain 15 proficiency points. He would be able to break through to the 3rd level in about a year and advance to become a quasi-knight. This speed was already very fast. It was not inferior to his genius father. As for the golden cross slash, Levi practiced it every day until his body reached its limit. Sword techniques were not like breathing techniques, so he did not have to worry too much about going crazy. Hence, his improvement was still very fast. Of course, every week, Levi would give himself a day of rest to give his overloaded body a chance to catch his breath. It was also because of the transformation of his breathing technique that his body was abnormally strong. If it were an ordinary person, this level of training would have exhausted them to death. Holy Brilliance Calendar Year 1004, Month of Vitality, March. All things were revived, and the grass grew, and the orioles flew. Levi's golden cross slash successfully broke through to level 2. He opened the panel immediately. Chapter 9. Black Snake Breathing Technique, Level 2, 1002/5000. Golden Cross slash, Level 2, 3/5000. Special Effect, Intermediate Vibration. The special effect has been upgraded. It became Intermediate Vibration. Levi pulled out Frostmourne, and his body and arms shook rapidly. He instantly unleashed the technique that had formed muscle memory. Frostmourne buzzed and tore through the air. Clang! A beautiful cross appeared. Levi divided the ordinary wooden stake into 4 neat portions. Golden cross slash proficiency +1. He changed his target to the black dragon wood pillar. The same strength and technique. This time, the cross slash only managed to cut an inch into the black dragon wood pillar before it could no longer move. Levi pulled it out forcefully and sheathed it. Phew, the effect of the intermediate vibration force is very obvious. At the very least, it can cut through an ordinary wooden stake with a single strike. However, the black dragon wood pillar is still quite lacking. Looks like I'll have to reach level 3 and master the advanced vibration force before I can achieve the effect like Sir Fred's. As for ripple force, I think I need to reach level 4. It did not take long to reach level 2 from level 1. After all, it only required 1000 EXP. However, from level 2 to level 3, the difficulty increased drastically. Whether it was the breathing technique or the golden cross slash, Levi had temporarily reached a bottleneck. The next breakthrough would be at least half a year later. He was not in a hurry. After mastering the intermediate vibration force, he felt that his strength had increased greatly, but he still lacked some actual combat training. Therefore, he planned to carry out actual combat training every now and then. It wasn't a drill like Sir Fred's, but a real battle. Levi decided to go to the back mountain of the territory to find an opponent. He had already thought of the perfect target for actual combat training. The reason why Montenegro province was called Montenegro Mountain was because of the Montenegro mountain range that spanned more than 1,000 miles. The Montenegro mountain range was covered with dense black forest all year round. There were all kinds of primitive conifer forests inside. Countless ferocious beasts were hidden in the forest and snow field. The Blackwater Valley was located at the foot of a branch of the Montenegro mountain range. This place was at the periphery of the Montenegro mountain range. Compared to the depths of Montenegro mountain, there were not as many wild beasts. In the entire Montenegro mountain, the most representative creature was the mountain wolf. They were widely distributed in the wilderness of the northern part of the kingdom. Under normal circumstances, they would appear in groups of 3 to 5, making them a good target for Levi to fight. According to his experience with basic archery, he would gain more proficiency through actual combat training. The mountain wolf was undoubtedly a very good combat target. They were natural-born hunters with an average shoulder height of more than 1 meter. They were much bigger than the largest North American gray wolf in his previous life, and even bigger than the extinct dire wolf. They were even more ferocious and had thicker bones. This was because there were too many beasts that were stronger than them living in Montenegro Mountain. For example, the giant bear of the Northern Territory whose strength was comparable to that of a knight, or the wild beasts at the level of a king in the Montenegro mountain range, such as the silver saber-toothed lion and the armored mammoth, whose strength was comparable to that of a grand knight. Of course, Levi was only a knight attendant, so he did not dare to look for those powerful existences, nor did he dare to look for the large mountain wolves. His target was 3 small wolf packs or a lone mountain wolf. Anyway, with Sir Fred's protection, even if the giant bear of the Northern Territory appeared, he would be safe. As for those king-level beasts, they would only appear in the core area. Levi was only hunting at the edge, so it was basically impossible for him to encounter them. In front of him, a fat and strong snow deer was looking for food. This was a common herbivore on Montenegro Mountain. When Levi was training in his basic archery, he would go into the mountains to hunt one every 3 to 5 days. For a territory with low productivity, hunting deer meat was a good source of food. Most importantly, snow deer meat was really delicious. Sir Fred was also an experienced hunter. He was in charge of keeping watch on the surroundings. Levi nocked an arrow with his bow, and he easily pulled the bow to the full with his great strength. The effective range of this bow was 120 meters. Levi was now about 80 meters away from the snow deer. Separated by some dense forest, the deer had not discovered Levi yet and was busy eating grass. Whoosh! With his archery at the max level, Levi naturally could not miss. The arrow had pierced deep into the snow deer's head under immense force, piercing through its skull. Soon, the snow deer fell to the ground. I'll use it as bait. With the mountain wolf's nose, I'm sure it will smell the blood soon. Sir Fred, let's go up the tree. Levi sat on a tree, waiting for the rabbit to come. Time passed by. Not long after, a wolf's howl came from the forest not far away. Howl. Immediately after, there were different wolf howls in response. 4. Do you need me to make a move? Sir Fred asked. Levi shook his head. You can attack if I can't defeat them. With my armor, there shouldn't be any problem. After a while, 4 mountain wolves the size of calves appeared in the forest below. They sniffed the surrounding air vigilantly. Fortunately, Fred and Levi were both experienced hunters, and Levi had maxed out his hunting skill, so he had already dealt with his scent. In the end, the 4 wolves gathered around the snow deer's corpse. The strongest alpha wolf even started to dig its stomach. Without the permission of the alpha wolf, the other wolves did not dare to eat even though they were drooling. At this moment, a rope descended from the sky. Levi followed the rope and landed heavily on the ground in his armor. The snow seemed to be trembling. Boom! The snow and Levi's strong body allowed him to land steadily. The vigilant mountain wolf immediately realized that something was wrong. After roaring for a while, it was unable to scare Levi away. Under the leadership of the alpha wolf, the other wolves all charged at Levi. They were extremely fast. Even experienced hunters could only run up the trees when they encountered them. Golden cross slash. The sword light of the cross slash stirred up ice and snow. A mountain wolf was cut into 4 by the sword light, and its internal organs flowed all over the ground. Killing in one blow was extremely simple and crude. Golden cross slash mastery proficiency +5. This perfect cross slash gave Levi a 5-point increase in proficiency. This was something that had never happened before. The alpha wolf looked at Levi in horror. With its high intelligence, it immediately knew that it was no match for the human in front of it and immediately fled. You want to run after eating my venison? The taste of the wolf meat was not bad either, so Levi naturally would not let it go. The territory was too poor. Even if he was the lord, and if he wanted to eat freely, he had to hunt by himself. Levi did not use his archery skills. Instead, he quickly chased after them. Although he was wearing armor, his agility and speed were not much inferior to the mountain wolf in a short period of time. Very soon, he caught up with one of them. He used the golden cross slash. Another mountain wolf was dismembered, and its blood splattered onto its armor. Golden Cross / Proficiency +4. Chapter 10. After killing the two wolves, Levi realized that the alpha wolf was gone. Suddenly, Levi felt a huge force behind him. It turned out that the alpha wolf had taken advantage of his lack of vigilance and ambushed him from behind. Levi lost his balance and was pushed down. The alpha wolf pounced on him and bit his head. Levi's basic combat skills were already at the max level. He instantly formed an elbow strike to protect his head and hit the alpha wolf hard. Then, he stood up again with another kip up. He held onto the big tree beside him and panted. He had underestimated the intelligence of these beasts. The alpha wolf stopped running and started to distance itself from Levi as if it could tell that Levi was at the end of his rope. Under its call, a few more wolves actually received a response and quickly rushed over. Not long after, Levi was surrounded by 5 mountain wolves. Even a quasi-knight could lose his life if he was not careful when surrounded by 5 mountain wolves. 5 wolves. Sir Fred's heart skipped a beat, and he was ready to attack at any moment. It's only been 2 months, and you've already mastered the vibration force of the Golden Cross / Young master's talent in swordsmanship is much better than I thought. The battle below continued. Levi wore his armor and tried his best to dodge the mountain wolf's attacks. However, there were still too many wolves, so he couldn't completely dodge it. Some mountain wolves occasionally bit the armor that covered his entire body, but they were unable to break through his defense. This was the strength of humans, and it was not Levi cheating. A knight's battle was inseparable from armor. Whether it was chain armor, plate armor, scale armor, or composite armor, good armor was a knight's second life. Therefore, he used the armor to train himself with weights from the beginning. This way, even if he did not wear armor in the future, his agility and speed would increase by a level. The black snake breathing technique was quickly circulated, and the energy in Levi's body burned violently. To use the Golden Cross / so frequently in such a short period of time was extremely taxing. Levi decided to end the battle quickly. Frostmourne and his armor were already dyed red, and the ground was also dyed red. In the end, the fearless mountain wolves were killed by Levi. The crafty alpha wolf ordered its subordinates to die, and then it slipped away, only to be shot in the head by Levi. He looked at the corpses of the mountain wolves on the ground. He had a clear understanding of his own strength. In a head-on confrontation, he could now deal with more than 5 mountain wolves while wearing armor. If he did not wear armor, he could only deal with 3 at most. The strength of 3 mountain wolves in this world was even stronger than the Siberian tiger in his previous life. This kind of combat effect is still a little weaker than a quasi-knight. After all, when fighting a knight, my armor's advantage will be lost. My armor can only deal with these wild beasts. Levi analyzed the results of this battle. Overall, he was very satisfied with the actual combat training. Just the proficiency of the Golden Cross / alone had increased by 30 to 40 points, which was equivalent to 1 or 2 days of hard work under normal training. During actual combat, the use of sword technique and breathing technique is in a more efficient state than usual, so there was an increase in proficiency. Levi guessed. However, safety always comes first. In actual battle, safety must be guaranteed. Otherwise, it's better to take it slow. With the proficiency panel, Levi did not need to comprehend and break through during life and death situations. He had used up a lot of his breathing technique and sword skills just now, and the intense hunger struck him again. Levi was already familiar with the situation and quickly took out the dry rations he had prepared to relieve his hunger. Sir Fred walked over and looked at the corpses on the ground. "Let's pack up and prepare to go down the mountain. The smell of blood here is too strong. It might attract a large-scale mountain wolf pack or other ferocious beasts. If it was a pack of wolves with hundreds of them, even Sir Fred would be dead if he was surrounded, let alone Levi. It would be useless even if he wore armor. Armor was not Iron Man's armor, and it had weaknesses. The fur of these mountain wolves was great material. It was the most suitable material to make leather jackets. Moreover, their defense was quite good, and the meat itself was also an important source of food. After clearing out the unedible internal organs, Levi tied the corpses of the snow deer and mountain wolf to a sleigh that was made at the last minute. He and Sir Fred dragged the thousands of pounds of prey down the mountain. Right after he left, more and more wolf howls appeared and gathered in the mountains. Then, a mix of frost white and black mountain wolves appeared at the place where Levi was fighting, filling up the clearing in the forest. It was a super wolf pack of over 100 mountain wolves. Even an official knight would have to flee at the sight of such a wolf pack. These wolves formed a circle, lowered their heads, and whined in low voices. Then, a giant silver wolf with a shoulder height of more than 1.3 meters and a body size comparable to a polar bear slowly walked over. Around the giant silver wolf's neck, there was a lion-like mane that was flowing in the wind, making it look extraordinary. It was obvious that this was the leader of this pack of wolves. Judging from its size, it was far larger than a normal mountain wolf. It might be a mutant. It looked at the various internal organs on the ground with a complicated expression. Then, it directly began to devour the corpses of its own kind. In the cold winter, no food could be wasted. After eating its fill, the wolf lay on a huge rock. Its sharp eyes looked at the traces of the sleigh and the blood stains in the forest. They were finally led to the foot of the mountain. Smart wild beasts rarely took the initiative to fight against humans as it was unwise. However, in recent years, the snow had been heavier every year than in previous years, and the number of prey reduced. As the overlord of this area, it was becoming more and more difficult for the alpha wolf to feed more than 100 wolves. The livestock behind the human fences was undoubtedly very tempting. After returning to the territory, the servants and soldiers looked at Levi, who had returned with a full load, and they cheered. "Get ready to patrol because the hunt this time has caused quite a commotion. It might attract the wolves to take revenge. Get the blacksmiths to forge more arrowheads," Levi said coldly after resting for a short while. The main fortifications of the castle had been repaired, and there were 50 militiamen under his command. Although their weapons were basically farming tools like pitchforks, and their defensive equipment was simple wooden shields, with the combat skills that Sir Fred had taught them, it was not a problem for them to deal with a mountain wolf, right? Humans had extraordinary physical qualities, especially their endurance. Coupled with the tools they had, many ordinary beasts were not as terrifying as they thought. This hunt had increased the castle's meat reserves by a lot. Levi could finally relax and cultivate the breathing technique for a period of time. After sending off the month of vitality, the month of grass, April, came. The chill gradually faded, and the temperature was warming up. The snow on the valley plains had already melted, and the green grass sprouted. It was full of vitality. The serfs in the Blackwater Valley began to sow the spring wheat. The militia also joined the team to cultivate and sow after training. If the weather was good this year, they would be able to harvest in September. Spring was in full swing, and the territory was thriving. The snow had subsided, and the passage to the outside world was also open. On this day, Levi, who was cultivating the breathing technique in the castle, opened his eyes. Just 3 days ago, he received an unexpected invitation. Chapter 11. Dear Baron Levi Schneider, it's almost the month of flowers. The silver frost flowers of the Silver Moon territory are about to bloom. I sincerely invite you to attend the aristocratic dance ball I'm hosting this year. The letter was from Baron Fox of the neighboring Silver Moon territory. Do you want to go? No. Levi refused decisively. Then I'll get someone to write a letter and reject it? Sir Fred turned around and left. I'm still too weak now. If I go to the ball alone and get targeted, I won't be able to escape. But if I bring Sir Fred along, who will guard this territory? There was no high-speed rail in this world, and the roads were inconvenient. It would take at least a day or two to go back and forth. Levi had no interest in the aristocratic dance ball. This was just a boring social activity that the nobles of this world used to show their superiority. When he was young, his father had brought him to the aristocratic dance ball organized by the Duke of Montenegro, and he had seen the hypocrisy of these nobles. If I have the time, I might as well focus on training my proficiency. After saying that, Levi continued to cultivate. Staying in the territory was safe and comfortable. Time flew by, and the month of flowers, May, arrived. After crossing a few mountains, about 200 miles south of Blackwater Valley, was the Silvermoon territory. Baron Fox was the owner of this territory. It was the day of Baron Fox's aristocratic dance ball. Within the Silvermoon territory, on a hillside where silver frost flowers bloomed, noble boys and girls dressed in gorgeous clothes were admiring flowers, drinking wine, eating barbecued meat, dancing aristocratic dances, and chatting about some meaningless gossip. I heard that the eldest daughter of the Duke of Montenegro is engaged to Edward, the White Horse Knight of the royal family. Oh my God, isn't that great? The White Horse Knight Edward, a grand knight at the age of 25, is known as the most promising person in this era of the royal family to become a legendary knight. Although the White Horse Knight is not a legendary knight, he is already a legendary figure of the royal family. He has shown his talents in the Millennium Holy War and killed 2 Grand Knights of the Church of Storm by himself. He has now become the dream lover and Prince Charming of all the noble girls in the Emerald Kingdom. Last night, I dreamed that I was on the White Horse Knight's unicorn with him, he. Speaking of which, in the Blackwater Valley in the north of my father's territory, a genius who was no weaker than the White Horse Knight was born. Many people thought that he could become a legend, but he died in the Millennium Holy War. You're talking about the Black Snake Knight, right? The Black Snake Knight is too old-fashioned. Even when he died, he still couldn't forget his first love, his deceased wife. He didn't marry more women and leave more descendants for the Schneider family. He only left that prodigal Levi. That's right. Levi from the Black Snake family is a coward. He gave away my father's business to someone else. This kind of person can't achieve anything. Moreover, my father invited him to attend the aristocratic dance ball, but he didn't even come. He didn't care about my father at all. This is too rude, humph. One of Baron Fox's daughters said angrily. These noble children were talking and laughing. As they chatted, there was no lack of drunk little guys. Men and women ran to the small forest behind the hillside to do some embarrassing things to carry out more in-depth communication and connection. Although there were restrictions from the church, the nobles of this world could always turn some normal social balls into abnormal gatherings. In the conference hall of the Silver Moon Castle, 3 armored noble knights were drinking and chatting. The leader was a middle-aged noble with a long and narrow face and a thin body. He was the master of the Silver Moon territory, Baron Fox, but people usually called him the Silver Fox Knight. The other 2 were Baron Bill, the Rock Bear Knight of Rock Hill, and Baron Wolf, the Frost Wolf Knight of Frostwind territory. These 3 barons were Levi's 3 neighbors, and they were all official knights. Thank you for coming to my ball. Baron Fox smiled and said elegantly. Old Fox, just say what you want. Who doesn't know that the Silver Fox family has always been scheming? Our Rock Bear family doesn't like to beat around the bush. The tall and sturdy Rock Bear Knight said. His tone was not polite at all. He had been practicing the giant bear breathing technique of the Rock Hill family for many years, which made his body far larger than ordinary people's. He was 2.3 meters tall, like a small giant. His full and sturdy demonic muscles contained the same strength as a bear. Big guy, you haven't changed at all. You don't care about Silver Fox Knight at all. Frost Wolf Knight smiled and said. He looked around and said, speaking of which, Why didn't anyone from the Black Snake family come? The Silver Fox Knight coughed and said, "The little black snake rejected my kind invitation. I bet it must be the idea of that serpent vulture knight. But it doesn't matter anymore. Without Sadur, the Black Snake family exists in name only. With just a serpent vulture knight who is about to go down from his peak, it won't be long before it perishes. I've called all of you here to discuss the future of our three great families. For this, I've also invited an important person." After the Silver Fox Knight finished speaking, he clapped his hands. Then, the door of the meeting hall slowly opened, and a knight wearing plate armor with a meteor hammer hanging from his waist walked in with a rumble. His face was covered by the helmet. "This is..." The Rock Bear Knight and Frost Wolf Knight's expressions changed slightly as they looked at the Silver Fox Knight. "Don't panic. This is Wild Boar Knight of the Wilderness Brotherhood. He's not here to fight with us this time but to discuss something," the Silver Fox Knight said with a smile. "So you're the Wild Boar Knight? I heard that you've cultivated the wild boar breathing technique and have boundless strength. Some people even say that your strength is even greater than our Rock Bear family, hee hee." The Rock Bear Knight sneered. It was obvious that he was not convinced. In terms of strength, many excellent breathing techniques could not compare to his family's giant bear breathing technique. The Wild Boar Knight glanced at Rock Bear Knight without saying anything. "Silver Fox Knight, you actually invited people from the Wilderness Brotherhood. If the kingdom and the church find out, you know the consequences." Frost Wolf Knight's expression changed drastically. "Only a few of us know about this. As long as you don't say anything, the church naturally won't know." The Silver Fox Knight narrowed his eyes and smiled meaningfully. Hearing this, the Rock Bear Knight and Frost Wolf Knight's expressions changed drastically. Then, Wild Boar Knight blocked the gate of the castle's meeting hall. The Silver Fox Knight said apologetically, "I'm sorry, the two of you. I'm doing this for the Silver Fox family. You don't think you can keep the two of us, do you?" Frost Wolf Knight unsheathed his knight sword from his waist, and Rock Bear Knight swung his heavy hammer that weighed 100 pounds. Wild Boar Knight, who had been silent all this time, took out a black ancient snuff bottle from somewhere and chanted a strange chant. Lamp Spirit, quickly reveal yourself." Chapter 12. The lid of the black snuff bottle opened on its own, and a strange black smoke came out of it. The black smoke quickly rose and condensed into a distorted human figure, like a scream in an abstract painting. "What sorcery is this?" Rock Bear Knight was extremely shocked. He smashed his heavy hammer at the distorted figure. Wild Boar Knight watched quietly with a smug look in his eyes. The heavy hammer passed through the distorted black smoke and finally smashed into the ground, causing the ground to crack. Frost Wolf Knight also slashed with his sword, but it also pierced through the body of the black smoke. He finally woke up and cried out, "Big guy, this is an evil spirit. Damn it, our attacks are ineffective against the evil spirit. Run. We must report this matter." Before the Frost Wolf Knight could finish his words, two streams of black smoke came out of the distorted human figure and entered the nostrils of the Frost Wolf Knight and the Rock Bear Knight. In an instant, the two knights were rooted to the spot, unable to move. The Rock Bear Knight's arm glowed with a black light. He used the power of black gas. Immediately, a terrifying and strange howl sounded from the Rock Bear Knight's body. It seemed like two forces were fighting in his body, but in the end, the Rock Bear Knight's face lost its luster, and the black gas on his arm began to dissipate. Although the black gas had the power to resist this black smoke, it was obviously limited to this. The situation of the Frost Wolf Knight was the same. It could not continue after resisting for a moment. In the end, the two knights fell to the ground. Their eyes were wide open, and their expressions were distorted as if they had seen something extremely terrifying. It was as if their essence, chi, and spirit were instantly sucked out. Wisps of white gas surged into the snuff bottle's evil spirit, causing it to solidify. These two knights looked no different from ordinary people, but they had no aura. They were already dead. Burp. The snuff bottle's evil spirit seemed to have eaten its fill. It burped and entered the black snuff bottle, leaving behind a sentence that echoed in the meeting hall. I am very satisfied with this deal. According to the principle of equal exchange, as a gift, I will help your wilderness brotherhood once. In the next transaction, you need to offer 3 knights. The evil spirit actually spoke. The wild-born knight quickly lowered his head and said respectfully to the snuff bottle, "Yes, Lord Lamp Spirit." After doing all this, they looked at the corpse on the ground. Just like we discussed at the beginning, the wild-born knight said coldly, "When the 3 of you were participating in the aristocratic dance ball, you were attacked by the legendary evil spirit. Rock Bear Knight and Frost Wolf Knight were unfortunately killed. You were lucky enough to escape because you were devoutly wearing the badge of holy light of the Heavenly Father. But will the people of the kingdom and the church believe it? Murdering other nobles is a serious crime." Silver Fox Knight asked. He was clearly not confident. "Don't worry. Whether they believe it or not, no one will pursue you. Instead, they might use this opportunity to spread the news and make their lord appear even more omnipotent. Moreover, the Millennium Holy War has exhausted the kingdom and the church. The lords below have long been restless. I think the king will not care much about the death of these 2 barons. Instead, he will secretly heave a sigh of relief." Wildborn Knight sneered. "In addition, it is an indisputable fact that the 2 of them were attacked by evil spirits. You didn't lie about this. Otherwise, there is no way to explain the fact that the 2 of them were completely unscathed and died without being poisoned. However, they would never have thought that this evil spirit was controlled by someone. You have to believe that in this world, only our wilderness brotherhood has the ability to control this legendary terrifying evil spirit. Pleasure working with you. We've completed the task successfully. The only fly in the ointment is that the Serpent Vulture Knight didn't come. Here's 1,000 gold coins. I hope our cooperation will become more and more pleasant in the future. Chaos will eventually descend. May the Lord of the Wilderness bless you." After the wild-born knight finished speaking, he threw down a big bag of gold coins and turned around to leave. Only the Silver Fox Knight was left with an uncertain expression. In the end, he sighed and picked up the bag of gold coins on the ground. For a small territory like the Silver Moon territory, 1,000 gold coins were almost 10 years of financial income. In this world, the purchasing power of gold coins was very strong. For Silver Fox Knight, who urgently needed to expand his military equipment, this was a huge sum of money. It meant dozens of sets of excellent knight armor. For this huge sum of money, even if he had to risk the church discovering the truth, he had to do it. That evil spirit is too terrifying. The 2 official knights couldn't fight back at all. However, the black gas seems to be able to resist the evil spirit, but the effect is very weak. Or rather, the quality and quantity of the black gas of the Rock Bear Knight and the Frost Wolf Knight are not enough. The Silver Fox Knight had a lingering fear. Whether it was that strange invisible attack or that illusory body that could be immune to attacks, it made the evil spirit invincible against the knight. The Wilderness Brotherhood has mastered the power of the evil spirit. Now, it's the kingdom and the church's turn to be in trouble. The real winter was about to arrive. No one could stay out of it. The only thing the Silver Fox Knight could do was to become as strong as possible before winter arrived. A few days later, through some traveling merchants in the territory, Levi learned that the Rock Bear Knight and Frost Wolf Knight had encountered a legendary evil spirit and died suddenly. Levi couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, I didn't go. Regardless of whether the rumors about this evil spirit are true or not, Silver Fox Knight definitely didn't have good intentions when he invited me back then. Levi muttered to himself. He was skeptical about the rumors of the evil spirit attack. He had encountered an evil spirit before and knew that the evil spirit was not just a legendary thing. However, this evil spirit killed the Rock Bear Knight and the Frost Wolf Knight, and only the host Silver Fox Knight was fine. This was a little strange. However, this was not something Levi should worry about. Even knights are no match for evil spirits. What kind of existence are these things? I have to put the search for clues to the wizards on the agenda. I have to use magic to deal with magic. Spring had passed, and the summer of the month of flowing fire had arrived. After more than a month, the Church of Holy Light's investigation results on the deaths of the Rock Bear Knight and the Frost Wolf Knight was finally out. The final result of the investigation was that they had died from an attack by an evil spirit. For a time, the entire country was in a state of panic. All along, everyone had thought that evil spirits were just ancient legends. It was a lie that adults used to scare naughty children who couldn't sleep. And now, its existence was confirmed by the world's most authoritative organization, the Church. In response, the Pope of the Church of Holy Light warmly reminded the nobles and civilians that if they wore the Church's badge of Holy Light, it had the effect of exorcising evil spirits. It was precisely because of this that Silver Fox Knight was protected from the attacks of the evil spirit. For a time, the memorial badges that were originally only worth 1 gold coin issued by the Church on the occasion of the millennium had been hyped up to a ridiculous price of 100 gold coins per badge. From the nobles to the rich merchants, they would not feel at ease without wearing a badge of holy light when they went out. After all, evil spirits were just legends in the past. But now, evil spirits really existed. Even the high and mighty knights were so fragile in front of the evil spirit. Of course, all of this had nothing to do with the peaceful Blackwater Valley. Chapter 13. Within the territory of the Blackwater Valley, there was a lush forest valley. The Blackwater River quietly passed through it, witnessing the changes in the territory over time. This year, the crops in the territory were growing very well. With the irrigation of the melted snow from the mountains, under normal circumstances, there would not be a drought. The sunlight in summer was also very sufficient. The only flaw was that they could only grow 1 crop. Everything in the territory was running in an orderly manner. Unfortunately, Levi was a liberal arts student in his previous life and knew nothing about science and engineering. He also did not know many scientific inventions that could improve productivity. Otherwise, he could be like the other transmigrators, climbing the technological tree in his territory and creating a scientific revolution. He might even be able to lead this extremely backward world into the steam age. He was not good at management, nor was he good at farming. He only knew how to immerse himself in obtaining experience. All the matters in the territory were handed over to Sir Fred and other professionals to manage. To Levi, having the proficiency panel, he only had 1 goal from the beginning to the end, and that was to pursue immortality in this other world. The identity and status of a lord were just tools in the pursuit of strength. Wealth, power, love, and all the troubles in the world were just floating clouds. Year 1004 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, month of the furnace, August. During the month of the furnace, it was mainly hot in the south. The Blackwater Valley in the north of the kingdom had a higher altitude and the temperature was just right. Sir Fred led the militia to build irrigation canals for the territory and led them to the Blackwater River for irrigation, so the crops grew well this year. In addition, Lord Levi also called on the serfs in the territory to rely on the Blackwater River to fish when they were idle, which could also increase the income of the territory. Levi was afraid of being pestered by the evil spirit, so he naturally did not dare to go to the Blackwater River. Unfortunately, his dream in his previous life was not needing to work, and having a pack of cigarettes, a stool, and a fishing rod to fish for a day. As his strength increased, the amount of meat he consumed increased. He could eat more than 10 pounds of meat a day, but the production of beef and mutton in Blackwater Valley was limited, so Levi thought of eating fish. Most of the fish in the Blackwater River were cold water bass and salmon. Their meat was delicious and nutritious, and there were plenty of fish bones in fresh water. However, for Levi, the fish bones were just something that he could swallow directly, so it did not matter. Levi also taught the chefs in the territory some of the cooking methods from his previous life so that they could cook fish for him and the soldiers. Steamed, braised, and grilled fish had different cooking methods. The taste was definitely not as good as in his previous life. After all, the Emerald Kingdom was similar to medieval Europe before the great discovery of navigation. There were not many spices. Occasionally, some were shipped from other countries, but they were controlled by the nobles and the royal family. Even Levi could not afford to eat them. However, it was still better than the dark dishes they had made before. The water quality of the Blackwater River was excellent, and the fishy smell of fish meat was not strong. This could be considered as solving some of the meat problems of the soldiers in his territory. Sir Fred also started eating river fish with Levi. In fact, ever since he became a knight, Sir Fred rarely ate river fish. In the eyes of the nobles and knights in this world, river fish was only eaten by the lower class. However, seeing how Levi was thrifty and ate river fish in order to save money, Fred was shocked. Young Master Levi is destined to achieve great things. In the midst of peace, the days passed and the month of Wheatfield arrived. The wheat in the territory was golden yellow, and the joy of a bumper harvest was overflowing on Lord Levi's face. Farming is a beautiful thing. It was a fixed rest day every week. Levi drank wine and watched the serfs harvesting wheat at the foot of the mountain. This year's weather was good, and Levi felt that the wheat production would definitely be much higher than last year. However, when the month of harvest, October, arrived, Levi was dumbfounded. Compared to last year, the production had increased by less than 1%. He called for Sir Fred and the butler of the territory. Looking at the data from previous years, he discovered an interesting phenomenon. No matter what year it was, the wheat production of the territory basically didn't change. After some research, Levi realized that there was a problem with the territory's policies. According to the convention of this world, the serfs in the territory were the private property of the lord, and the land was also the private property granted to the lord by the king. The serfs' income, whether it was wheat or other agricultural products, other than keeping a small portion for themselves, the rest had to be handed over to the small lord. After the small lord converted the food into money, he would hand over a portion to the big lord directly under him. Finally, he would hand it over to the largest lord, the royal family of the Emerald Kingdom. They called it assistance money. As time passed, many serfs began to slack off. Whether it was sowing or fertilizing, they were all very perfunctory. In any case, they had to give it to the lord in the end. No matter how much they harvested, it had nothing to do with them. Then why would they work so hard? As long as the yield was not too low, the lord would not blame the serfs. After all, everyone's output was not high. Levi felt that it was necessary to change the policies in the territory. He called Sir Fred over and told him his thoughts. Sir Fred was a little surprised. Since ancient times, I don't think anyone has done this. You're the lord. If you think those serfs are lazy, you just need to set a hard target for them every year. If they don't meet it, they will be severely punished. There's no need to be so kind to them. You're still too kind. Levi shook his head. The best way to motivate these people is not to punish them, but to make them eat their fill. Then let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to the way we were. There's no loss anyway, Sir Fred said thoughtfully. Just like that, after the month of harvest, a new policy was implemented in the territory. The butler went from house to house, telling the serfs a piece of great news. The Lord has announced that from next year onwards, each family will only have to hand over 60% of the wheat harvested in the year to the Lord. Other than that, the rest of the wheat will belong to the serfs themselves. The serfs in the wooden houses all revealed expressions of disbelief. Is this true? Heavenly Father, our Lord is not lying to us, right? Are you questioning the Lord's authority? No, no. In the end, in order to dispel the concerns of these serfs, Levi had to give a speech in person to announce the implementation of the decree. Hearing that it was true, the serfs were overjoyed. For the first time, they felt that life was so promising and that their future was bright. Levi did not know if this move would work, but he felt that it was time to make some changes. Autumn in the Blackwater Valley was always too short. In the blink of an eye, it was the month of northern wind. On the training ground below the castle, Levi's body and arms trembled, and it created after images. He slashed out a beautiful cross with Frostmourne in his hand. The sturdy black dragonwood pillar in front of him, which was covered with all kinds of slashes, finally split into 4. The sound was crisp, and the incision was smooth. The system notification sounded. Levi let out a breath, and with a pleasantly surprised expression, he could not help but jump up. He was so happy that he looked like a teenager. I broke through. Levi. Black snake breathing technique, level 2, 4502/5000. Golden cross / level 3, 1/10,000. Special effect, advanced vibration. Chapter 14. Advanced vibration force. Ha ha ha, this is advanced vibration. I've already mastered the first level of the golden cross / the vibraforce /. Levi could not help but exclaim in satisfaction at the pleasure brought by the increase in strength. The current me should be able to put up a fight against a quasi-knight. It's just a pity that I don't have the chance to test it out. After all, the golden cross / is a killing move. Once it's used, blood will be spilled. Levi sheathed his sword. It had been a year since he started practicing the black snake breathing technique. Now, he was not far from reaching the 3rd level of the black snake breathing technique. He should be able to reach it by the end of this year. At that time, he would be a true quasi-knight. One only needed to condense the life seed to become an official knight. Becoming an official knight meant that he finally had the ability to protect himself in this world and entered the ranks of the upper and middle class experts in this world. In short, the difficulty of cultivating the breathing technique was still much higher than the first level of the golden cross /. Of course, Levi guessed that it might also be because his talent in the way of the sword was not bad. Next, I'll use the black snake breathing technique to break through to the 3rd level as soon as possible. After setting his goal, Levi once again activated the explosive training mode. This was how a lord's life was. It was repetitive, boring, and dull. However, every time he saw the +1 proficiency notification, Levi felt that it was all worth it. Year 1004 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, the month of winter. It was the 3rd year after the end of the Millennium Holy War between the Emerald Kingdom and the Tuva Empire. Although the two countries no longer had major wars, small-scale conflicts continued. In fact, everyone knew that this was not a war between two countries. It was the conflict between the churches behind the scenes. The Church of Holy Light, which believed in the Heavenly Father, and the Church of Storm, which believed in the Lord of Storm, wanted to expand their territory in order to expand their influence. They wanted to expand the influence of the Church to the entire world. Of course, it was very difficult to achieve this. There were a total of 7 large kingdoms and empires in the world. The citizens and nobles of each country had their own faith in their own gods. The various forces were constantly fighting openly and covertly. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to destroy the other 6 countries and churches and unify the world. However, since the birth of the 7 churches, their purpose and significance were to spread the faith. Therefore, in the foreseeable future, the evolution of civilization would inevitably be inseparable from the struggle of these religions. Putting aside the war between countries, there was also a war going on in the mountains where the Blackwater Valley was located. In the dense forest, hundreds of mountain wolves surrounded a giant silver-white bear that had just woken up from hibernation. The silver-white bear's shoulder was 1.8 meters tall, and its body was more than 4 meters long. This was one of the most famous wild beasts in the north, the giant bear of the Northern Territory. They had the strength of a knight when they grew up, and the best among them had the combat strength of a high-level knight. It was easy for them to kill a giant elephant. This bear was actually a little smaller because it was a female bear. If it was an adult male bear, it would usually have the strength of a peak knight. Opposite the giant bear of the Northern Territory was a wolf pack that covered the mountains and plains, as well as the mountain wolf king that led these wolf packs. Mountain wolves were the most terrifying existence in the Black Forest. Their individual strength was far inferior to the giant bear of the Northern Territory. However, they won in terms of team cooperation, as there were many of them. However, under normal circumstances, even if there were hundreds of wolves, they would rarely take the initiative to hunt the giant bear of the Northern Territory. It was because there were too many wolves and there was a lack of food this year. This was originally the Mountain Wolf King's territory, but this spring, this female bear had intruded into its territory and fought with it for scarce food. From time to time, she would also kill its wolf pack. Today, taking advantage of the female bear's hibernation, the Mountain Wolf King had been considered for a long time and was prepared to kill this female bear and have a good meal. Unexpectedly, this female bear was still very vigilant. It seemed to have sensed the arrival of the mountain wolf pack from afar and actually wanted to escape. Of course, in the end, it was still caught up by the wolf pack led by the Mountain Wolf King. Now, the female bear, who was surrounded by a group of mountain wolves, stopped running. In terms of speed and endurance, it was impossible for it to run faster than the mountain wolves. These were the most patient hunters. They were one of the few who could compete with human hunters in endurance. It wanted to end the battle quickly. Its roar resounded through the forest. Its front feet left the ground, and it stood up. Its majestic body was as tall as a 2-story building. Many ordinary mountain wolves began to retreat. Seeing this, the Mountain Wolf King roared toward the sky to boost the morale of its team. It was a rare mutated wolf king, an existence that could be compared to a knight, although it was not a match for the giant bear of the Northern Territory in a one-on-one battle. But it was not a lone wolf. Just like that, the wolf and the bear began to fight in the valley. Countless mountain wolves pounced at the female bear fearlessly. The female bear slapped down, and the mountain wolves that did not dodge were immediately turned into mud. Not to mention wolves, even knights wearing armor would not be able to withstand a blow from a giant bear of the Northern Territory if they did not have plate armor. Although plate armor could barely withstand a frontal impact, the huge force could still shatter the internal organs and bones of most knights that practiced non-defensive breathing techniques. In order to survive, both sides were doing their best. There was no right or wrong, just for the sake of staying alive. In the end, the giant bear of the Northern Territory was covered in mountain wolves. Its thick and hard fur was also covered in wounds, and countless blood dyed the snow red. It was already tired, but it did not collapse. Instead, it continued to fight. In the end, after losing a third of the mountain wolves, the female bear was on the verge of death. Only then did the cautious Mountain Wolf King make its move. Its sharp canine teeth bit the neck of the giant bear of the Northern Territory, and the other mountain wolves directly began to cut open its stomach. The giant bear of the Northern Territory's shrill roar echoed through the forest, and the birds and beasts retreated. The king of the forest was about to fall. In this region, there could only be one king, and that was the Mountain Wolf King. Not long after, the giant bear was completely silent. The battle was over. The Mountain Wolf King enjoyed the spoils of war. With the corpse of the giant bear and the corpses of its dead companions, it should be enough to last for a month. It had no pity for the dead wolves. As long as there was enough food, new blood would soon join the wolf pack. What the Mountain Wolf King didn't know was that in the cave of the mother bear, which was more than 10 miles away, 3 cubs the size of calves were looking sadly in the direction of their mother's death. They were running aimlessly and in a panic. They were born in the spring of this year. The giant bear of the Northern Territory needed more than 7 years to mature. They were less than a year old, and although they looked old, they had yet to learn how to hunt. Instinct told them that perhaps the location at the border between the deep mountains and the human settlements would allow them to survive. There, they could sneak into the human settlements at night to pick up trash and eat. They could also stay away from these dangerous wolves. Out of the 3 chubby bears, one was gray, one was pure white and looked like its mother, and the last one seemed to have mutated genes. It was mixed with black and white. In short, it was chubby and did not have the prestige of its mother at all. The 3 little ones were connected head to tail, stumbling towards the valley where the Blackwater Valley was located. What awaited them was an unknown new life. They had not learned how to hunt, and their bodies were not strong enough. There was a high chance that they would die young and not see the sun tomorrow. However, this was a cruel world. Living was difficult, wasn't it? Chapter 15. Year 1005 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, the first day of the new year. Ever since the Rock Bear Knight and Frost Wolf Knight were attacked, there would be news of evil spirit attacks from time to time, but it was unknown if they were true or not. In response to the recent frequent attacks by evil spirits, the Church of Holy Light claimed that a bishop of the church had developed a holy water that was extremely effective against evil spirits. It was called Holy Light No. 1. One only needed to consume 1 bottle every 7 days, and after a month, he would be immune to all evil. Once the holy water was released, it was priced at 10 gold coins per bottle. The first batch of 3,000 bottles was sold out within a week. What was even more shocking was, it had 0 negative ratings. Levi felt that the nobles of this world were easy to deceive. However, it was understandable that he came from the modern world and naturally did not understand these people's fanatical faith in the church. Ever since that incident, the probability of evil spirits appearing has increased. Wizards, oh wizards, how can I find traces of wizards? Levi was rummaging through some books made of goat skin in his father's study. As of now, there was no paper making or printing in this world. Therefore, even for a noble family like his father, the collection of books in the house was very limited. In the end, he found nothing. Sir Fred hurried to the study and said to Levi excitedly, "Young master, I brought you a birthday present that you would never have imagined." Levi was curious as to why the calm Sir Fred was so excited. He saw that Sir Fred ordered his subordinates to push a cage with wheels covered with a curtain. Sir Fred lifted the curtain, and 3 furry guys could be seen curled up in a corner. Bear. Levi had a strange expression. In front of him were 3 bears the size of calves. Why did Sir Fred give him 3 bears? "Young master, this isn't an ordinary bear. These are the cubs of a giant bear of the Northern Territory." "What? Giant bear of the Northern Territory?" Levi was shocked. He had heard of this beast before. It was a beast that was comparable to an official knight when it reached adulthood. Last night, a female farm worker found something sneaking into her yard in the middle of the night and ate her chicken. Then, she found this little guy. This little guy wanted to escape but was caught by the militia patrolling at night. Although it was just a baby, it took a lot of effort to catch him. Sir Fred took out a black and white bear and pinched the back of its neck. The bear bared its fangs and brandished its claws, wanting to attack Fred, but it was in vain. There were still some chicken feathers left by the little bear's mouth. It was hard to imagine that such a small fellow would become the ferocious giant bear of the Northern Territory in the future. The other 2 cubs whimpered as if they were worried about their brother. These 3 little bears were not fat. They could be said to be as thin as a stick for a bear. It was obvious that they had been starving for a long time. If they had not been discovered by Sir Fred, they might have starved to death in a few days. "Where's their mother? Would it follow the little bears sent to find trouble with us? Levi was a little worried. He was no match for the giant bear of the Northern Territory. Don't worry. It looks like their mother has died or left them behind. Usually, this is the hibernation period of bears. If they don't stay in the cave at this time, it means that something happened to their mother. The cubs of the giant bear of the Northern Territory are worth more than 100 gold coins on the black market. Many nobles want to domesticate these ferocious beasts from a young age. When they grow up, it's equivalent to having a competent knight-level pet. But I suggest that we raise them ourselves. The cubs of the giant bear of the Northern Territory are rare, but it's expensive to raise them. Sir Fred was in a good mood and tried his best to persuade Levi to keep the 3 bears. All right, let's keep it. Let's keep it in the castle for now and send some people to take good care of it. Levi came to the side of the 3 little bears and carefully sized them up. He said, "This gray one will be called Little Gray, that white one will be called Little White, and this one with mixed fur will be called Little Fatty since it's the fattest." Levi asked the servants to take care of the cubs. These cubs would need at least 7 years before they could be put to good use. Moreover, he did not know if these wild cubs could survive. Therefore, he could not place his hopes on these external objects. The most important thing was to improve his strength. After sending the howling bears away, Levi looked at Sir Fred and asked, "Sir Fred, how's the search for books on wizards coming along?" Fred smiled. "You're really concerned about wizards. Don't worry, I've already sent people to look for them. They're basically biographies of rangers or novels. They can't be taken seriously. I found a book here that I got from a wandering merchant. It records a legend about wizards. You can take a look." Sir Fred handed over a sheepskin scroll. It was very old and shabby. Grimm's Travels. The author was a person called Grimm. Obviously, Grimm was a pen name, but no one knew who he was. Levi returned to his room, opened the book, and started reading from the beginning. Grimm described himself as a traveling merchant. The content of his travel notes was not much. It mainly recorded some strange things that Grimm heard on his journey, one of which was about wizards. In the year 847 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, on the sea east of Storm City in the Emerald Kingdom, the merchant ship that I was on crashed due to a storm. I held a wooden board and prayed to the Heavenly Father to survive the disaster. Perhaps my devout faith touched the Heavenly Father, and I survived. I was washed to an unknown island by the waves. I didn't know where I was, so I looked for food everywhere on the island. Then I saw many magical creatures that subverted my imagination. A 3-legged toad with a beautiful face on its back. There was a swan with 6 pairs of wings. It was pure and beautiful, like the 12-winged angel beside the Heavenly Father. There was also a red mushroom that could run. Damn it, that fellow could even speak human language. It even tore a piece of meat from its own body and fed me with it. After eating the mushroom, I fell asleep in a daze. I vaguely remember a beautiful lady sitting beside me. I don't remember what happened after that. When I woke up, I was already back on a fishing boat. The fisherman said that he found me floating on a wooden board and saved me. I think I might have encountered a wizard that only appeared in legends. Only wizards would research and create strange creatures. Moreover, I realized that after eating the mushroom's flesh, the chronic illness that had plagued me for many years no longer existed. I was younger and stronger than before. This must be the power of magic. It was that witch who saved me. Later on, I made a lot of money from doing business and wanted to go to that island to look for that beautiful witch. However, that island seemed to have disappeared into thin air. I went out to sea 7 times, but to no avail. Until now, my hair has turned white. In order to go out to sea, I became a pauper again. My family and friends left me. They said that I was crazy, but I knew that I wasn't. I really met a wizard. I regrouped and sold my mansion in the capital. I was determined to go out to sea for the 8th time. Before I went out to sea this time, I wrote down everything I experienced and published 100 books at my own expense. If I didn't find the legendary wizard, I hope that those who read this book can continue to look for her. Oh, right, I vaguely remember that in the conversation between the red mushroom and the beautiful witch, the mushroom called the witch Ms. Rowland. Part 1 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.